Yo, what up guys, it's me again, and yes, a Frost DK guide on this YouTube channel. I know it's been a long while. I think it's no secret that the spec has been a little underwhelming for a bit, but there's actually some things I really like about it right now. And, we could be next in line for a spec or a rework here because they've been doing a lot of those class and spec reworks, and Frost DK, both in PvE and PvP, has some complaints with it. But like I said, there's a lot I really like about it right now. So if they doubled down on those things that make the rotation more smooth, the burst more fun, and then took out some of the fluff, filler, and garbage that I'll talk about in the talent section later, then actually they would have the core of a really, really fun spec. So I thought maybe this would be a good time to, actually make the guide, go over what I found that I really enjoy, what's working for me. I don't really make guides when I don't have success with something. So I was really not doing anything with Frost. I finally went 5-1, 5-1, 5-1, got some rating, and I was like, okay, finally, this is how this should actually feel. This is how to actually win some games with this spec. And now, of course, I figured I would pass all of that on to you guys. So finally, here it is, a Frost DK guide on this channel. What I originally was known for, and now I never do. But here it is. I hope it helps in some way. Okay, so we start out, as always, with gear. And we talk about stats, which, broken record on this channel, it's the same for every spec in the game, I swear. Because what happens here is crit is dead, and verse you have too much, which just leaves haste and mastery, and they're both good for pretty much every class except for a very select few, which means you want haste and mastery, right? So how do you get that? Well, you take away some of your verse and put it into haste and mastery because you're way over verse cap. What does that mean? 30% is where it DRs, plus you don't want to go all in on one stat anyway because it just makes your output very low. So you craft a piece like this one, the Signet of Titanic Insight with haste and mastery from a Missive of Fever Flare. That's how you put that stats on there. Then you can see I enchanted a mastery, jumped at haste mastery. What's missing from this? Verse. There's no verse. This allows me to lower my verse right below that diminishing return point and put it all into haste and mastery. Some phenomenal output stats. Again, no crit is needed. I get that you get KM procs from crit, but you also get KM procs for free during Pillar with obliteration talent, so you'd be completely wasting your breath if you got any extra crit at all from what you need from the tier set. So, so effectively, you get all the PvP gear, and then you craft haste mastery pieces on like your ring or your waists or your chest, which I'll show you in a second. And that will lower your verse, put it all into haste mastery, and give you phenomenal stats for output and for overall chest pressure. You can also do that by getting embellished gear. So you can do it at the same time, right? You can see this is my Primal Molten Breastplate with my first embellishment is Verdant Conduit. This is haste mastery on that chest, you can see, like I promised. The Verdant Conduit is just a no condition proc stats. So that just makes it really good. You have some other ways of getting stats on an embellishment, like the Blue Silken Lining that gives you mastery above 90%, but that is a condition that Frost DK unfortunately cannot fulfill very often because you take a lot of damage. So having no condition on this just makes it useful. So of course, that is what I recommend for your first conduit, or your first embellishment is Verdant Conduit. The second one being these same boots that we've used the entire expansion, because Frost DK does goes. When you do a go, you stun them. When you stun them, you get primary stat. Primary stat is good for Frost, especially with Pillar and Fallen Crusader. So that's a no-brainer. Everything worked out, right? And then finally, that's stats, that's embellishments. What's left? Tier set. And how do you get your tier set? You go exactly helm, shoulders, gloves, legs. Those are the four pieces that give you the best overall stats, that give you the least amount of crit. You can actually see these are very well statted pieces. That's haste mastery, that's haste mastery, that's haste verse, and that's crit mastery, but it is mastery main stat. That is a ton of mastery on it. So to get an entire 4-set, and your 4-set actually feels really good, you're only getting the most minute amount of crit. So is that a no-brainer? Yes. You will not ever drop the 4-set. You'll grab those exact four pieces and you'll run it for the rest of the season, and you will be happy that you have it the entire time. So hopefully that makes it as easy as possible for your gearing, because everything I just said is locked in for what you're going to run. Finally, you put on Fallen Crusader because we still do use the Avalanche talent, which gives you Razor Ice, so that gives you both. And as for the final thing that has anything to do with gearing, it would be this trinket right here. The insignia is what I use because I run the more frequent goes with ice cap, and I'll explain both builds in just a second in the talent section. But if you're using the all-in build, which a lot of people do and recommend, if that works better for your playstyle, again, I've not played a single game with that, and I have gotten a good amount of rating. I think I'm about 2420 MMR, so both builds could work depending on which one resonates with you. But if you run the all-in build, what are you going to run? Badge. Badge, of course, it's on use. If you want to do all of your damage in an exact window, you would want the one that can proc exactly when you needed to by using it. Badge for all-in, insignia for sustain. That's everything for gearing. I really hope that I explained that well enough, because that should give you every single piece of gear that you're going to run the entire season. Now we go into talents. So with these talents, I am going to talk about the general template for Frost talents, because if you know anything about Frost DK right now, you know almost every single talent is like completely locked in. We don't really have many choices, and if we were to have those choices, they're completely gutted in PvP. Things like Cold Heart, 66% nerf. Breath, don't even get me started about how unbelievably horrible this capstone is in a PvP environment. In fact, really, I don't even want to talk about it. So you have the Frost Scythe, unusable. Glacial, unusable. Right? You have these talents that are just meaningless, which means you kind of lock in a default set of talents, and it leaves 5 or so that you can move around based on the playstyle that you want to do. Just those 5 talents, effectively. So what I want to do is I want to give you that base loadout. And of course, I'll link it below. And I want to talk through it. And then I want to talk through those changes you can make based on, you know, the various playstyles that you have. So let me do that. Okay, the top is just abilities. Of course, you need these abilities. They're your abilities. Of course, you need Pillar. That's your cooldowns. It's all of your damage. Of course, you want Frost Strike damage, anything that buffs your main damaging ability, which is Obliterate. Obliterate by 10%, Obliterate by 15%. All locked in. Then the right side, Rhyme. That's just an ability. Remorseless Winter damage. This one is unnerfed in PvP, so it's actually a good chunk of damage, and it gives you a free Rhyme proc. Rhyme procs, by the way, are also buffed in a PvP environment because Howling Blast is. So, of course, then you would want Improved Rhyme. Then you would, of course, want Icebreaker. Those are both things that buff Howling Blast. You also get a ton of Rhyme procs from A-Bomb Limb, which is probably the only reason this thing is any good now. It gives you 1 grip, which is nice, but it does no damage. It doesn't grip multiple times, but it does give you multiple Rhyme procs from the duration of this A-Bomb Limb, which each generate a killing machine during obliteration and do a huge chunk of damage, both single target and AoE themselves with the talents Icebreaker, Improved Rhyme. There's the Rhyme itself and the Howling Blast PvP mod. So, the left side was locked in. Those right side talents are locked in. What about Chillstreak? I just talked about how good the 4-set is, and the 4-set entirely works around Chillstreak. So, that's locked in. There is a interesting change here. We finally get to talk about something new. Piercing Chill. Your 4-set gives you extra bounces, cooldown reduction, extra range, and damage increase to yourself. Which means it does feel like, with all of those things, and the Piercing Chill buff, it did recently get buffed, that Piercing Chill is just the better option now. Because you got the extra range, you got the extra bounces, and now you get that extra burst from how many times they can just stack up that buff. Enduring Chill still has value, and it makes it even harder for you to drop a Chill Streak ever because of the extra bounce range, and it will certainly bounce an enormous amount of times with Enduring Chill, but I just really like the spike damage you can get from Piercing right now. I think they're both phenomenal. So again, that's kind of how you feel kind of option there. So that locks in all of the right side, all of the left side, and then there's one more obvious lock-in, Obliteration. You have to go down all of these talents to get there, which means all of those talents are completely locked in. Obliteration is your spec right now in PvP. If you don't believe me, you could just talent out of it and lose every round in solo shuffle, and you'd be like, oh yeah, that's not very good, right? This effectively generates all of your pressure the entire game. Without it, you feel so much weaker, which means I've now just described to you what I was talking about. That's your template. All of these, all of those, and this, which leaves the variable talents being this little pillar package right here that currently I'm running because I prefer the sustained go. So what am I talking about with that? It means running Ice Cap, because your Remorseless Winter is a 30-second cooldown now instead of 45 with Dead of Winter. Your Chill Streak is lowered in cooldown from the tier set, which means that can go down. It starts at 45. It can get even lower than that. And your Pillar being a minute means it kind of just, you're going to have these buttons up for all this time and you're not going to be able to use them. Now, that's not really a problem because you can do an all-in go that kills their entire team. But if you're finding that people just wall that off and you're not doing anything after, you can play this build. And like I said, 5-1, 5-1, 5-1. I've had some pretty decent success with it, so I think it is runnable. So you use Ice Cap, Enduring Strength, and Frostwolf's Aid, and this whole small pillar package allows every single pillar, you try and just get as much obliterates and frost strike outside of pillar to use ice cap value to reduce the cooldown of your pillar. And you have a ton of haste, which I already talked about in the gear section. So you can, even though you don't really have a lot of crit, you can get enough globals in to just keep fishing for KM procs, keep getting ice cap value and getting that pillar lower and lower. So you can do your pillar go faster than they get their disruption available, and just quicker, so they're on the back foot, and then all of a sudden pillar comes up and they're like, I did not expect that. I thought I had another 25 seconds or whatever, and then you can just kill them in a Remorseless Winter stun pillar because that's still 4-second stun with your pillar go. So that's what makes it sustain, but there's one other talent that I added to this kit that I really adore, and it's Gathering Storm. One thing about this go is that you don't just grip blind stun string every time, because again, blind is a 1 minute cooldown, but you're trying to get your go below a minute, right? So your Remorseless is not absolutely guaranteed to get this perfect, beautiful, pristine go. The longer you can extend it, the longer you are likely to get that long 4-second stun on him, or this guy you need to peel, or the guy behind you that's just getting cleaved by Remorseless Winter, or the healer that you were able to get in, but they got a little ways away, but then you can grip them one more time, and because you've extended your Remorseless, it takes a few more time landing that stun and generating a kill that you wouldn't have, especially with all this value around Chill Streak. You can have enough damage to win the game in that period, because Chill Streak hits really hard right now. So these 45-second goes extended by Gathering Storm to make sure that you get the lockdown, even if it's not as pristine as the grip blind, absolute zero, AoE stun out, that sort of thing. It does feel like you have kill pressure outside of that, and that's what I love about it. The other thing is you can get 2 stuns, right? What's the coolest thing about absolute zero? You stun them, they trinket, you stun them again. Well, Gathering Storm allows for that. You get the first stun, but you extend the Remorseless Winter's duration, so it stuns them again for half DR. That's a 4-second stun into a 2-second stun, and I've had that win me games. Literally, you've probably seen it, right? Somebody dips out at 20% health, and you're like, oh my god, I don't want to use the global on a Sphex because it's just like one of those situations where you just kind of have to use globals to kill there. And your second off global Remorseless stun, because it's building, right? So you don't need to spend another global to restun them there. Stuns them for 2 seconds, and you're pressing an obliterate at that time, and it finishes somebody off. It's just a really, really fun talent to play around, and I think you're going to like it. Plus, your Remorseless Winter damage just benefits really heavily from this. So that is the sustain build, and that's what it looks like. And like I said, I'm going to give you the other setup too, but it's not an entirely unique build with some of my other spec guides are. You really just have to get down to absolute zero. And how you figure out stuff like this is a little it's instead of just giving you the talents to copy paste, I can show you kind of my thought process. Well, you have to keep Avalanche because it's your Razor Ice, and that's how you're going to get down, right? So you really need Frostwhelps because it's extra mastery, and this is all about all-inning, so you can drop Enduring. But then you have to pick up Fatal Fixation because otherwise you don't have a connector to Inexorable. So you have to just kind of go through. You drop those. Pick up Fatal. Okay, but now I got to drop Gathering. Okay, but wait. Now I don't have Icebreaker. So you have to do this. And then, no Ice Cap. Absolute zero. Oh, I did it. It's like magic, right? You kind of have to find out. Actually, you honestly could keep gathering with this if you finangled it, but it would take some work. You'd still have to run Ice Cap. You'd have to drop something over here. It's probably not playable. Anyway, this is how you make an all-in kind of go, right? You just need absolute zero and Frostworm's Fury, because what this does is it gives you an on-demand stun with no ramp. So when you grip blind and you need to lock them down in that exact global, right? You can grip blind, set your D&D down. Now you're cleaving all three of them. Then you absolute zero with remorse down. They trinket the absolute zero into remorse stun because the remorse is the one that ramps, but the absolute zero is instant right when that dragon comes out. And the dragon is nerfed in PvP, but it does do a decent amount of chunk damage to start off a stun, so it's nothing to totally scoff at. So this is that traditional, like, okay, I'm only going to do damage every 1 minute. You can see Ice Cap gone, Enduring Strength gone, right? I'm only going to do damage every 1 minute, but God, when I get the goes off, it's going to be destructive. And I can show you the exact setup for this. I think it's probably worth doing. So let me apply the changes here because this is the one that's kind of locked in for a rotational setup. So I just want to show you what I mean by... And I'm just going to do it to these cleave dummies because it's a bizarre setup, right? So you're going to... There's the healer over there, right? You're going to grip that healer to the rest of the players that should have double chains on them, like this, right? They're double chains, and then you're going to grip the healer to these two slowed players. Then you're going to send off a blind. And in that blind, you need to set up two things. Death and Decay, because of what makes your obliterate crit. So now you're obliterating their entire team at the same time. Or sorry, you're obliterate cleave, not crit. Then Remorseless Winter, because you need that to start ramping. So when they either get out of the absolute zero or trinket the absolute zero, they get immediately stunned again. So grip, blind, D&D, remorse, then the absolute zero with pillar, A-bomb limb, Rhyme proc, obliterate, frost strike, obliterate, rhyme proc, obliterate, right? So it'd look like you'd grip. I can't actually grip the dummy, but you would grip. Then you would blind, D&D, remorse, absolute zero. And then now you're finally, look, they're all stunned. Do you see how they get immediately stunned out? And you can start doing the obliterates, the obliterates, the obliterates. So it's kind of a bizarre setup, but I wanted to go over that while we were still talking about talents because there's those two kind of setup globals you have to fit while they're all blinded because you need them to be on top of you when you press them, right? You're not going to press D&D in Africa and then hope that they just walk over there, right? It's got to be all of this at the same time. So that's what the one-shot build looks like as far as what talents you choose. And I have to get rid of my goal so I can pull it back up again. And that's what the one-shot looks like in actual practice, right? Or at least dummy-related practice. Those are the buttons that you would press. Here are the talents. Those are the buttons. Again, personally, I prefer, and I can show you again how you get back to it, right? You just drop absolute zero. You drop fatal fixation. You put the pillar package in there, and then you go over to Gathering Storm. This is the one I prefer. It gives you more fun to have over the course of the game, right? Instead of waiting for an exact moment, you can constantly have those moments, which I think is more fun. And I think people who are a little tired of the I do literally nothing for 1 minute at a time while everybody's just kicking my head in, I think people who are tired of that would really feel nice about this setup right here. So there it is. There finally it is. I've shown you a Frost DK talent build that resonates with me, something that I enjoy. The left side have been locked in for a long while. You really need the things that allow you to play defensive as best as possible. That's things like short IBF, blind is non-negotiable. You'll want the zone because it's a huge defensive. You need double grip, right? You can drop Lichborn Wall. I use Lichborn Wall because I'm just dead all game when I play the sustain build because I have to stay in to sustain. So anything that reduces my damage is good. But of course, Frost DK benefits heavily from long range grip. This is a no-brainer. You're trying to grip everybody in, blind them in AoE stun. Well, the longer your grip range is, the better you're going to be able to do that. So there's a choice you can make. Asphyxiate on an off target if you guaranteed have kill feels pretty good. You can also half asphyxiate out if you're, again, guaranteed to kill. You got your double chains. You've got your empower just for the smoothness of the globals. You get some rune generation and haste during your burst. It's still very valuable. Limb I already talked about. Giving you rhyme procs and pulling them in one time in case they trinket and try and get away. They get limbed back into the half remorseless stun. Feels really good. Yeah, D&D stuff. That's how you D&D cleave with obliterate, double D&D, double grip, double DA. These are all extremely important. So the left side of the DK talents just completely locked in. And of course, I have the link down below with all of these talents, so you'll be able to just have them, right? And that should help a ton. Finally, we have some PvP talents here. Remorseless Winter Stun I've talked about effectively the entire time, which is nice. That gives you a locked-in talent, so you don't have to really even think about it. Strang is the other locked-in talent. Frosty K wins and goes. Goes are accentuated by a silence that is off the DR from all of your other CC. It's still instant, it's still hard CC, and healers still really have little to do about it, which locks in 2 of your 3 PvP talents. The final one is pretty much up in the air. If you're playing with the caster, you still could get 4% extra damage to all of your damage and all of his damage. If you see, I happen to have Bitter Chill in because since, again, I'm running the sustain go, I have to stay in, I have to live. Reducing their haste just makes them do less damage to me. Also, reducing the healer's haste makes their globals slower. Kind of a niche little pick there, right? If their globals are slower, they have a little bit less ability to react to what I'm doing. Also, their caster's slower. If their caster's slower, they have a little less ability to react to what I'm doing, right? This is kind of just a small little pick that I do because I run the sustain. It's like a niche pick that I run. Delirium is great against mages. Death Chill is great if you're running. So if you have Frosty, if you're playing Frosty K Dev and you just want to run the entire game, feel free to pick this up as an option. And then otherwise, you got Bloodforged to survive, but it ends up meaning that this is kind of like a self-defeating talent. If you're death striking the whole game, you never really get any pressure off. So if you're running the sustain build, this talent effectively means you're not going to be able to sustain. It's like you want to press death strike to get Bloodforged armor value, but if you press it, you don't get your ice caps, you don't get your pillar, you don't get your damage, right? So it's like a paradox, right? It's crazy. But if you're running the all-in build, and again, you want to survive just for those windows to come back up, and it's double physical dam, you can run this to survive a little better. But this actually is I locked in this PvP talent loadout. Again, Dead of Winter, Strang, and Bitter Chill for all of those 5/1s, and it really kind of felt impactful to have disruption like that through minus haste, the AoE stun, and of course, our favorite instant silence on a 1-minute cooldown. And that is everything. So I showed you a little bit of the go in the talents section. Obviously, go back there if you want to see that again. But now I'm going to show you how I kind of play, my thought process for playing the sustain go. So since I don't have absolute zero, it's kind of grip blind, remorseless winter stun. And then every single time I have remorseless winter, I kind of herd people together with like grip chains and then pull melee toward a ranged or pull melee to a healer because they're always on me when I'm staying in the entire game. So I can pull the melee over to the healer, double stun them with double remorseless winter and double chill streak in that. But the rotation is so simplistic still. It's just, Frost Strike for obliterate procs during obliteration, or if you have a Rhyme proc, you use the Rhyme proc for obliterate procs during obliteration. Then every time you have a KM outside of pillar, you use it instantly to do a big chunk of damage and also to get ice cap so you can start getting pillar up. And every time you have full runic power and you're not getting touched, you just spam Frost Strike to get, again, ice cap value, and Frost Strike actually hits pretty hard with the PvP mods. So you chill streak on cooldown, you remorse on cooldown, and you try and get pillar as short as possible so you can get pillar on cooldown, and it kind of looks like, blind, D&D, remorseless winter stun, all of your cooldowns, throw in the chill streak there so I can start piercing, and then you just do the rotation. Howling blast, obliterate, Frost Strike, obliterate, howling blast, obliterate, Frost Strike, howling blast, obliterate. And then you can see here, you're effectively now praying that you can just press enough of Frost Strike and obliterate until you get, there's a KM, right? And you just got a huge chunk off your pillar. Got a Frost Strike proc, or crit. Huge chunk, there's another huge chunk off. And I'm gonna see if I can get it to line up with chill streak here. And that is the magic of the build. You can see, I wouldn't have had them at the same time, but now maybe the healer's suffering a little bit. Maybe they're a little under the weather. You get your pillar back up faster than people expect with a chill streak go. And that chill streak, look at the damage from that. Look at the damage from that chill streak. You can see it's at 1 million right now. Since it can bounce off you, buff you, and keep the chill streak bouncing, even if you're just in a single target situation, you can find kills. Remorseless Winter Stun, 45-second Pillar, 45-second chill streak, or less to both of those things, depending on how things roll. And that's Frost. I pray that this works for you as well as it happened to work for me, because I know people have been really down on Frost recently. And I really enjoyed the little Gathering Storm tech that I've been playing with. That has been so cool. So let me know if this works out for you. If not, just go right back to the Absolute Zero setup, one-shot your way, and then run for 20 minutes. That's what I got for you guys. I really pushing and pulling for you guys, rather. Just, I want to see you have success with this. So let me know how it goes, and have a great day.